Sorry guys, so I got a very important call. Okay, so let's start, guys. I welcome you all again. Good evening. I welcome you all to this wonderful course, and that course is on healthcare guidelines in India. Okay, healthcare guidelines in India. So all the clinical trial guidelines we will be covering, not only the clinical trial guidelines, but all the relevant guidelines what we need in our pharmacy and healthcare we'll be learning about. Though there are around 25 guidelines, total 25 guidelines, but few are very specific, very specific. Those we cannot we usually don't need in our daily life and daily research. So whatever are required and whatever we must know in this course, we are covering those six guidelines. Okay, we are covering those six guidelines. I hope you are, aware of what we are, covering in this course, right? So these guidelines, when you, usually do the clinical trials, do the, any kind of research, so you don't know exactly what you are doing, frankly, because sometimes we are not aware of the proper guidelines, we are not aware of the proper rules and regulations, right? Whatever we follow is we follow whatever our seniors have done, whatever our teachers are telling, whatever our faculty members are telling, but we are not aware of the 100% thing whatever our regulations says. So it is necessary to know about the regulatory part, about what exactly the definitions are in the regulations, what exactly are the rules in the definition, in the regulations and rules, right? So everywhere in the world, every country and internationally also, there are, certain guidelines for the healthcare research. There are certain guidelines for the healthcare research, and those we must be following, right? So in our this course, we are going to cover the new drug and clinical trial rules 2019. Then we are going to cover also the national ethical guidelines for biomedical and health research involving human participants. Then we are going to cover the ICMR policy statements for ethical conduct of controlled human infection studies, especially for infection studies. Then we are going to cover the ethical guidelines for application of artificial intelligence, okay, in the biomedical research and healthcare. We are also going to cover the ICMR guidance on ethical requirements of laboratory validation. So you will see one term everywhere here, that is ethical. So sometimes we don't know the exact definition of this word ethical. Ethical doesn't mean that it should be it doesn't mean that it should not be. I mean, here when we talk about the regulations, when we talk about the uh, the national and international agencies, we talk about the legality, we don't talk about the morality usually here. Okay, morality is a little part. Why I'm telling is the this difference between morality and legality is because when we talk about the rules and regulations, those are made under legality, not the morality. Sometimes what we do is we do something out of the morality also. Sometimes we leave something because we are not morally correct or morally correct. Okay, so we have that confusion in us when we do the research, like, okay, what should be included, what should not be included, and that confusion gets us to the biases. Bias is the word. Bias means you are selecting such thing, you are selecting such thing, such person, such participant, such patient, such instrument, which is favorable to you. Okay, which is favorable to you or your research or funding agency or sponsor, right? So the moral word does not come here when we are using any kind of instrument, procedure, rule, regulation, or the process, or if we are getting any participation into our research. We need to consider the legality, not the morality. Okay, morality is a part of our human beings, but when we do the research, we must focus on the legality. So those things comes under all the ethical part, wherever we use the applications of AI also has a lot of new regulations, like how to use, how not to use, how to, because there are, see, when we have the new techniques, when we have the new process, when we have the new rules, we always have the uses and misuses. We always have the rules and we have the loopholes as well, right? So to prevent those loopholes, to prevent those misuse, we have certain guidelines, and those guidelines are not for the individual researcher or individual organizations, but for everyone, even for the patients, participants, and sponsors, sites, hospitals, any research organization, anyone. Okay, any importer, any manufacturer, any whatever, stakeholders are involved in the research, they have to, follow these guidelines, and they have to, work on these guidelines and work according to these guidelines. So we are talking, about these guidelines only in next 6 days. I mean, whatever the times defined here, in those 6 days, we'll be talking about these 6 guidelines only one by one, comprehensively. I'll be, I prepared some slides, and then according to, the guidelines, I'll be showing you the guidelines also, not only the slides. Slides are just for the basic purpose. And then I'll be showing you most of the guidelines, and I'll be teaching you from the guidelines only. Okay. So guys, before, I start with my presentation, let me share the slides, and let me ask you some questions, because those are very important, right? Those are very important, and that's kind of my style of, teaching. So I hope you can see my screen. It is visible to all of you, and full screen. Is it visible to all of you? Full screen, guys, please let me know. I hope it is. Okay. Yes, thank you very much. So before I start, the guidelines, so let me tell you a little background of mine, because you must not be feeling that, I'm not the person who can teach the guidelines. So I'm the person from the ICMR itself, Indian Council of Medical Science, Medical Research. I'm working as the research scientist there for ICMR, and deputed at Department of Medicine, Kasturba Medical College, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Manipal. And I'm also working as National Director for Research at World Youth Heart Federation for last 3 years, last 3 terms. And I have this company, CleanMed Research Solutions, you are aware of, and you are registered under for this course for the last 4 years. So that's my thing. And I have done multiple researches, published almost 60 papers in good indexed journals. So and I have worked on multiple ICMR and multiple international grants, like from National Institute of Health, NIH, USA, and NH, and in India, ICMR, DST, DBT, and CSIR. So I have worked on multiple grants of almost cumulatively 7.5 crore till date. So that's a little background about mine. So with that, let's start. Let's start about the guidelines. So today's first guideline, as you can see in the title, this is the New Drug and Clinical Trial Rules 2019. Okay, new drugs and clinical trials rule 2019, right, guys? So let me ask you some questions. Let me check my audience first. First question for all of you is, how many of you know that such guidelines exist in India? And how many of you do not know? Guys, let me know the truth. How many of you know that such guidelines are exist in India for clinical trials and all? And how many of you do not know? Please write. We just heard. Okay, that's an honest answer. We just heard. Okay, I know. Good. Okay. Anyone else? So I mean, you almost all of you know. Only a few people who does not know about these guidelines, right? Right, perfectly fine. So it's very easy about this today's class. So it's very easy for me too. So let's see the next question is, do you know some similar international guidelines? If you know the, please write the name here. If you know some international guidelines, I'm medical writing, very nice. Medical writer, very nice. So you must be knowing about the guidelines. So do you know some similar international guidelines is? And if you know, please mention the name here, guys. If you know about such international guidelines, please mention the name here. Yes, guys. Please mention the name. ICH-GCP, fantastic. ICH-GCP is International Committee for Harmonization? Is it? Harmonization? Good clinical practices. International Conference for ICH is not committee. ICH is conference. International Conference for Harmonization. Good clinical practice guidelines. Can someone tell me what is the new what is the new update and amendment, and what revision has been done recently in the ICH GCP guidelines? Which revision we are studying now? Which revisions we are studying now? R3, fantastic. R3, yes, we are studying now R3, revision 3 guidelines. Okay, so revision 3 was done recently in July. Okay, not this July, July 2023. 19th July 2023. E6R, yes, E6R3. So R3, the revision was done on the revision was done on 19th July 2023, and it was available for the people's opinion for 1 month, and then they released after 1 month for the use of public. Okay, very good, very nice. And there are multiple other, USFDA draft guidelines are there, QSEM guidelines are there. If you write the full form for my people, guys, it will be wonderful. Okay, okay, yes. SIMOS guidelines are there. CIOMS, SIMOS guidelines are there. BABE is there. European Medical Association guidelines are there. Yes, absolutely. These are. So my audience is quite, well. So my third question to you is, guys, how many of you have read the new drugs and clinical trial guidelines? Clinical trials rules 2019. How many of you have read? Not just heard. Now my question is, how many of you have read? Sadhya has read, Vadda is read, because you guys are working in the industry. Yes, yes. So two people have read yet, Sadhya and Venu. Okay, Balaji. Okay, okay. Anyone else who have read these guidelines? Who have read these guidelines? Please, guys, tell me. Great. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Most of you have not read. Now tell me, give me some two glimpse of new drugs and clinical trial rules 2019, guys. Give me some glimpse. Two glimpse, just two. Just two glimpse of new guidelines. Yes, guys. Just two glimpse. Just two. 13 chapters. Okay. Okay. Let me put the next question then. How many chapters, how many schedule, and how many forms are there in the new drugs and clinical trial rules 2019? Yes, guys. This is the copy paste answer, Sheikh Naimuddin. I want to test your memory in your words, not the copy pastes that you can study by yourself also in the Google. I want from you, okay? In your words, Venu, how many schedules, how many chapters, and how many forms? Can someone tell me? Okay, yes. So, guys, when I'm talking about the chapters, there are 13 chapters. When I'm talking about the schedules, there are 8 schedules. When I'm talking about the forms, how many forms, guys? 25 forms are available. 25 different forms. What is forms here? Forms means like there are certain formats for the applications. Okay, like application for what? Application for ethical committee approval, for ethical committee constitution, for new drug import, for ICF, for the clinical trial application, for the new investigational drug import, for the manufacturing of the new investigational drug. There are for the compensation, there are 25 forms available. In the new guidelines, there are 13 chapters, 8 schedules, and 25 forms. Understand? Yes, 25 forms. Absolutely. There are 25 forms, right? So let's see, let's talk about these things and let's start. So about the guidelines. New, the, okay, let me use my pen. Yeah. So new drug and clinical trial rules 2018 was published in exercise of the powers under what? Under the section 33 of Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940. You know, so guys, let me tell you, or let me ask you first. Let me ask you first, what major section or what major schedule the new NDCT has replaced? Tell me, which major schedule the NDCT have replaced? The new drug and clinical trial rules have replaced something major. What is that? Yes, guys, please tell me what is that? Yes, Schedule Y. Yes. So they have completely erased the Schedule Y. And then in place of Schedule Y, you have heard of a lot of Schedule Y drugs, Schedule Y this, Schedule Y. So previously, the clinical trial conduction and all the formalities, all the process, and all the forms were constituted. All the forms were placed under Schedule Y of the Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940. So now in the new NDCT, they have replaced those things completely. Okay, and they have come up with the new drugs and clinical trial rules 2019. So you will say that, sir, here new drugs and clinical trial rules 2018 is written. That is not to 2018. 2018 was the proposed one. Okay, so 1st July 2018, the guidelines were proposed. Okay, guidelines were proposed, but in 2019, these came to existence. That's why we call them the new drug and clinical trial rules 2019. Previously, these were when they were constituted. I mean, when they were prepared, the draft was prepared. They believed that these guidelines will come into the market by the end of 2018 only. But due to a lot of corrections, due to a lot of legalities, they delayed, and then the guidelines came into the existence in 2019. That's why we call them that's why we call them 2019 NDCT. So the first launch was on 19th March 2019. Understand, guys? 19th March 2019, right? And it was the next amendment. So recent amendment was done on 14th September, 14th October, sorry, 14th October 2022. The recent amendment was on 14th October 2022 in these guidelines. So these guidelines are made, drafted, and proposed by CDSCO. Okay, guys, remember this. These guidelines are proposed by CDSCO, right? These guidelines are proposed by CDSCO and came into existence in 2019, 19th March 2019. And the recent update, recent amendment was done on 14th October 2022, right? So application of these guidelines are on all new drugs, investigational new drugs for human use, all clinical trials, all type of clinical trials, all type of bioequivalence studies, all type of bioavailability studies, and all type of ethical committees. Okay, all type of ethical committees. These rules are these rules are applicable. These rules are applicable for all the new drugs, all the investigational new drugs, whichever are for the human use, all the clinical trials, all the bioequivalence and bioavailability studies, and all the ethics committees. Understand? So keep these things in mind. These are the crux points of the NDCT 2019. Okay. Now, specific definitions. There are around 100 definitions. There are around 100 definitions, 100 definitions of, clinical trials and adverse events, sponsor, a lot of all the stakeholders, site, bioequivalence studies, bioavailability studies, bioavailability center, and who is the stakeholder, sponsor. I mean, there are almost 100 plus specific definitions which you need to know, in these guidelines. So I will not tell you everything. I'll just tell you three, four here, because these definitions I will share these guidelines in your groups. You can read those guidelines and you can read those specific definitions. So first thing is academic clinical trial. What do you think, guys, is academic clinical trial? Here they have given the name of academic clinical trial. So what's your views on academic clinical trial? Then I will tell you. What do you think, guys, is academic clinical trial? Anyone? Academic clinical trial. Okay, let me make you speak also. If you want to speak, you can speak, but don't make noise in between. Please keep your mics mute if you are not speaking. Okay, I'm unmuting you all. Yes, so you can unmute yourself and speak, or you can just write. What do you think about the academic clinical trial? These are conducted in hospitals and universities. Clinical trials for academic purposes, trial without any commercial purposes, trials carried out in institutions for the for the new indication. Yes, for the new indication, definitely academic clinical trials for the new indication. And partially, you all are correct except trial without any commercial purpose. Okay, so commercial purpose does not exactly mean that if they are doing in the academics or something, but yeah, where here we are not working on the industrial clinical trials. Here we are not talking about the industrial clinical trials. Okay, there are two terms, two specific type of clinical trials and two specific type of new drug developments, what we usually learn. Some are in the institutions or organizations or colleges, if I say precisely. Some are in the pharmaceutical industry, right? Some are in the pharmaceutical industry. So we have the different rules for the pharmaceutical industry, right? We have the different rules for the pharmaceutical industry, not exactly the different, but there are regulatory bodies who monitor those things and who align with all the process, complete process. Okay, here in the academic clinical trial, again, we have the CDSO body, but they have assigned the work to the local ethical committees. Either those are independent or those are institutional ethical committees, right? And here the academic clinical trial are completely for the research purposes. Okay, research purposes. And yes, sometimes these research goes to the technology also, to make new technology, to make new development of, the new development of the drug. If they extract something really new, it goes for that. So usually academic clinical trial is something which is done in the institution. So academic clinical trial means a clinical trial of a drug already approved in the industry. You understand? Already approved in the industry for a certain claim and initiated by an investigator, academic or research institution for new indications. You understand? New indication, as Venu told, new indication or new route of administration, or maybe new dose, new doses form, where the result of such clinical trial are intended to be used only for academic or research purposes. Okay, research purposes, and seeking approval of the central licensing authority or regulatory authority of any country for marketing or commercial purposes. So these, why I am telling these are, for the commercial purpose also, some drugs and technologies are made in academia. Okay, why I partially disagree with the comment, like, trial without any commercial purpose. See, those can be done for the commercial purpose. Those can be done for the commercial purpose. But when these comes under the academic clinical trial, under the academic clinical trial, the research will be done and then the technology can be transferred to the commercial purposes after the regulatory authority approvals. After the regulatory authority approvals, right? So this is a simple thing. When we talk about academic clinical trial, only two things you have to remember. First thing is drug is already approved, and we are looking for something new. Either those are indications, dose, or maybe the doses form, anything it could be, or route of administration. It could be anything. We are looking for something new out of it, right? We are looking for something new out of it. Similarly, we have the active pharmaceutical ingredient, we have adverse event, we have bioavailability studies, right? So can someone tell me the definition of bioavailability studies? Adverse event, active pharmaceutical ingredient. So I'll tell you. I can, active pharmaceutical ingredient, you all know. Active pharmaceutical ingredient is like something which is used for the clinical trials with again new indications and all, and that is in the active form. Okay, that is in the active form. It may or may not be in the form of the final development or final doses form. Okay, that is active pharmaceutical ingredient. That is not in the final doses format. Okay, that is not in the form of tablet, capsule, elixir, syrup, or anything. That is the pure ingredient, pure chemical entity for the research purposes. That is called as active pharmaceutical ingredient. Active pharmaceutical ingredient. Yes. And then bioavailability or pharmacokinetics, Okay. So, yes, absolutely right. Absolutely right. So definitely bioavailability studies are to know the rate and extent, and to know the actual property of the drug in our blood circulation, how it is affecting in the human body, how it is affecting in the human body, right? So there are 100 plus definitions you can read in. Now let me come to the major part, what we all talk about, like who is the authority, guys? Who is the authority of NDCT? And yes, definitely to all monitoring purposes, what do you think is the authority and officer? Who is the authority and officer for all these monitorings, for all these guidelines? And if anything is being done, who is the authority and officer? Yes, guys. CDSCO. Yes. CDSCO? Anything else? Anyone else? Yes. So Central Licensing Authority is no one else but the drug controller, CDSCO. Okay. CDSCO and DCGI, Drug Controller Journal of India. Drug Controller Journal of India. So CDSCO and DCGI are the major stakeholders here. And DCGI itself has the power to appoint the assistant drug controllers as controlling officer if they need. So there are multiple assistant drug controllers in the CDSCO office who takes care of all the legalities and all the authoritative formalities, right? So that's DCGI. That's DCGI, Drug Controller General of India. Okay. Now, let's talk about the Independent Ethics Committee. That is the major part and the first part of our guidelines. Okay, first part, Independent Ethics Committee. Why I'm emphasizing now on the Independent Ethics Committee is because that is the primary authority in our institution, colleges, or hospitals to get the permission to conduct any kind of clinical trial. Okay, any kind of clinical trial, if we want to conduct, we have to take the permission of ethics approval. I mean, we have to take the permission of Institutional Ethics Committee or Institutional Review Board. Okay, IRB, Institutional Review Board, or IEC, Institutional Ethics Committee, right? Institutional Ethics Committee we have to take. If we are involving the human beings, if we are involving the animals, then Animal Ethics Committee we have to take. So when we're talking about ethics committee, see, it does not just mean that you go with your protocol and you get the approval. Ethics committee has a lot of things to do, lot of roles and responsibilities. And before that, there are rules and regulations for the ethics committee constitution itself. Okay, because see, for the institutions, okay, don't fight. So if we are performing, so you see, if we are like as an academician, okay, think of academician, think of a director of the college or principal of the college, right? You are the director of the college and you have hundreds of the master's student and PhD students who wants to do the clinical trials, who wants to do the clinical research, right? So how they will do? They cannot go ahead without the ethics committee approval, and you do not have the ethics committee in your college. That's not there in house. So either you have to pay the huge money and you have to send everything out for the scrutiny and approvals, or you have to constitute the ethics committee in house, right? So two things you have to do: either you constitute the ethics committee in house, or you have to send the money, the fees, right, and all the documents, all the ideas outside the college to the independent ethics committee, so they can give the approval and you can start the clinical trials. Your students can work on the research, right? So it is a best thing and it is important thing for all the institutions to have their own ethics committee if they fulfill the norms. Definitely, if they fulfill the norms, they have to have the ethics committee in house, so it can your I mean their research can go flawless, their research can go without any kind of external barriers, right? So that is very, very important to have. So now the things come here is how to constitute the ethics committee. What are the rules for constitution of ethics committee? What are the people in the ethics committee? See, you guys are just knowing, being the student, even I didn't know when I was the student. I didn't know that, like, okay, because we don't have to take care of the things. We don't have to worry about who are the people in the ethics committee and how this was constituted and how it operates, right? We don't know, right? We don't know anything, but we must know. We must know, because that is the only entity, that is the only first level entity which gives you the approvals, which takes care of all the clinical trial ethics, and which takes care of all the safety and integrity of the human participants in the clinical trial. So that's why they have emphasized even before the schedules. Before the schedules, they have all the chapters, and half of the chapters in these NDCT are on ethics committee, are on ethics committee. Someone's mic is on. Shruti, please. Oh, okay. So that's why we need to know about the ethics committee, and you all must know. Okay. So let's see. First of all, ethics committee is, when we talk about the human participants, it could be either a clinical trial for new investigational drug, or the clinical trial, observational studies, whatever, but involving the human beings. Okay, or the bioequivalence studies or bioavailability studies on the human beings, or the part or the organs or the components involving human beings. Okay, so when you are doing it on the human beings, or any kind of involvement of the human being is involved, there you need to take the ethics committee approval. So first of all, approval of an ethics committee is required for all such studies registered under Rule 8. Okay, so ethics committees are registered under Rule 8 of NDCT Act. Okay, are registered under Rule 8. The Ethics Committee shall apply for registration with the Central Licensing Authority under Rule 8. Under Rule 8. So who is the Central Authority? Central Authority is no one else but CDSCO. Okay, Central Authority is nothing but CDSCO. So all the ethics committees in the hospitals, in the colleges, pharmacy colleges, medical colleges are registered under CDSCO. Understand, guys? Are registered under CDSCO. Total of 17 rules. Yes, 107 rules. Yes. So are registered under CDSCO, right? Minimum of the 7 members must be there. Okay. Minimum of the 7 members. Remember this. Minimum of the 7 members would be there from medical, non-medical, scientific, and non-scientific areas. It is not at all necessary, or it is not required to have all the members, or there is no rule to have all the members from one institution, or from one organization. Okay, so it is very important to have someone from non-scientific and non-medical area. non-scientific and non-medical area. So who should be there? One lay person who does not know anything. One women member must be there. One legal expert, or usually the retired judge. Okay, retired judge must be there in the committee. Okay, one retired judge or the legal expert must be there. One women member must be there, right? So these things are, I mean, these members are, must to have in those part. Okay, must to have there, right? Must to have in the ethics committee, right? One independent member from any other related field. One independent member from other related field like social scientist or representative of any NGO or voluntary agency or philosopher must be there. Okay, so you understand the all, not only the scientific or medical people, but non-scientific like one legal expert, one layman who does not know anything about medical and science. Okay, and someone from social, maybe some social activist or social representative from any NGO. Okay, and one legal expert, maybe the senior advocate or retired judge. These must be there in the ethics committee. So your ethics committee, wherever you go, is not just the people from your college or your institution. There are the people from outside, the laymen. Now, can someone tell me why we need the people who does not know anything? Layman person. This is very important. See, these things you can read in the guidelines also. You can read anywhere. But tell me why we need the layman person, guys. Why we need the layman person? Can someone tell me? Yes. Why we need the layman person? Layman for safety of the participants. How? To carry on some non-professional activities? No. Yes, the answer is the layman does not know anything about science and anything about medical field. So his decisions or his thoughts or his opinions will be unbiased. He will be just thinking about the safety and well-being and integrity of the participant. Understand? He will be unbiased towards the process. He will be unbiased towards the process of clinical trial. He will be unbiased towards the whatever new investigational drug or whatever you are using, whatever process you are using. He will be unbiased because he will not be knowing. He will be just thinking about what? He will be just talking about the opinions of the people. He will be talking about the safety, well-being, and integrity of the participants. That's why we need a person who is layman. And why we need the social person? Why we need a social or socialist representative? Because he will also think about the social concepts and societal norms. Okay, they will be talking about societal norms, not only the scientific norms, because there are many things which are in the society does not go with the science. You know that there are many things, many biases which does not go with the science. So the person who can align both, who can align both and give the thoughts from the society side, a socialist person or socialist representative must be there in the community, in the ethics committee. Understand, guys? So I hope it is clear. Then at least now the new thing is, I mean, for you, at least 50% of its members must be there from outside, and C should not be affiliated to the institute or organization in which such committee is constituted. So at least 50% of the people must be from outside. Okay. Only 50% of the people or less could be from the institution. But when we are talking about institution, it is very, very important to have one person who is chairperson. Okay. Who can be the chairperson? The chairperson would be like one member of ethics committee who is not affiliated with the institute or organization shall be the chairperson. Okay, so the chairperson and chairperson, should not be from the institute. Chairperson should be from outside. Okay, one member who is affiliated with the institute or organization shall be appointed as member secretary. So only thing you have to remember is 50% people from outside, chairperson must be from outside, and member secretary must be from the affiliated institution. Member secretary must be there from the affiliated institution. Right. The committee shall include at least one member whose primary area of interest or specialization is non-scientific, that we have talked about. And that one member must be independent of the institution. So what I'm talking about is like the layman person or the socialist person must not be from the institute. He or she must not be from the institution. Okay. So that's how the ethical committee is constituted. That's how the ethical committee is constituted. So the members shall follow the provisions of these rules and good clinical practices guidelines. They should follow all good clinical practices guidelines. They must be trained for those things. Okay. The training for all the ethical committee members must be done from the regulatory, which regulatory CDSCO in India. The training must be done from the CDSCO side, and then only they can proceed with the meetings or proceed with the scrutinies of the protocol. Understand? Good evening, sir. If the name is not indicated in the ethical committee presentation, can be added in the manuscript for publication after completion of the research. Yes, definitely. You can write, different names in the for the research publication and all. Research publications are nothing to take with the ethical approval. Ethical approval can be done on the investigator's name, and publications can be done with other stakeholders also. So it's not necessary that if you are having the name in the ethics committee, it's not necessary to keep those name in the publication, and it is not necessary to keep the names from out. I mean, you can keep the names from outside, and it's not necessary to keep those names in the protocol or ethics approval. Okay, those are two distinct matters, right? Yeah. So here, even every member required to undergo such training and development programs by you, by our authorities. Who is authorities? DCGI or CDSCO. Authority is DCGI or CDSCO. Okay. Ethics committee again. So here, no member of an ethics committee having a conflict of interest shall be involved in oversight of the clinical trial. That means, see, if any person of ethics committee, if any member of ethics committee is directly or indirectly involved in the study protocol or study which they are scrutinizing now for the approval, the person should not be there and he should withdraw. He should withdraw voluntarily from the ethics committee review meeting. Okay, the person who is directly or indirectly involved in the research or protocol or ethics, part of that study, which protocol is undergoing the scrutiny right now. So they should not be the part of the review meeting. Okay, they should not be the part of review meeting, and they should withdraw immediately from that meeting. So it is not at all cool, or it is not at all ethical, it is not at all legal for the person to be in the reviewer meeting, because it can, or he or she can, he or she can influence the decision of other members for the approval. Understand? So details in respect of conflict of interest of the member shall be duly recorded in the minute of meetings of the ethics committee. Suppose like there are 7 members and ethics committee meeting is going on, and someone says, oh no, this study relates to me, this study is related to me, and I'm also the part of this study. So the all the members should record, I mean the minutes of the meeting should be recorded, that this particular person is involved in this research as this designation with these roles and responsibilities, and all the things must be recorded. Okay, and that person should not be in the meeting, review meeting. That person should not influence the decision of the review meetings. Understand, guys? Yes. So there are people, I can see there are 190 people coming and leaving. So guys, if you are interested in this course, certainly now also, if you have not registered, you can still register. There are 6 classes, so you can still register for this course. Okay. The clinical trial guide, I mean the healthcare guidelines, healthcare research guidelines in India. Okay. So ethics committee for clinical trial are here. So now registration of the ethics committee, no member of an ethics committee having a conflict of interest shall be involved. Okay, this is done, I think. So yeah, this is done. So yes, what was the registration? Registration must be done under CT02. What is CT02? What is CT02? CT02 is one of the form I was talking about. There are 25 forms in the NDCT, right? There are 25 forms in the 20C, in the NDCT, New Drugs and Clinical Trial Rules 2019. So CT2 is the form number 2. Okay, CT02 is the form number 2, the format number 2 for ethics committee registration. Okay, ethics committee registration. So as we register, we have the renewal of the ethics committee also. So on the expiry of the validity period of registration, usually the registration is given for 3 or 5 years, sometimes 10 years also. Okay, for the ethics committee, the major time duration for any ethics committee is 5 years. Okay, major timings for 5 years. Usually the ethics committees are given power for 5 years, sometimes 3 years, 10 years in exceptional cases, but majority it is 5 years. So after 5 years, they had to renew. Okay, with all the documents, the renewal registration form is CT01 along with, so CT01 is the renewal form. CT01 and CT02 must be submitted together with all the documents for the renewal of the ethics committee. Okay, renewal of the ethics committee. What are the functions of ethics committee? There are a lot of functions of the ethics committee, but majorly first is review and accord approval to a clinical trial, bioavailability, bioequivalence study protocol. So major task is to review the protocols and give the approvals for clinical trials or clinical studies. That is the major task. Okay. Then fixing the intervals and monitoring. Fixing the intervals and monitoring means based on, guys, listen carefully here. based on based on the clinical trial nature, based on the clinical trial nature and duration, ethics committee ethics committee decides like after how many months the reviewing and monitoring will be done. Okay, so usually it is 3 months and 6 months. Usually 6 months, every ethics committee asks for the report of clinical trial or report of the ethics committee, report of the any kind of study. They ask every 6 months. Okay, and a closure report at the end. You know that a closure report at the end. If you take an ethics approval from ethics committee for any kind of study, you have to submit the reports also frequently. Whatever interval is given for the monitoring, you have to submit the reports also on certain intervals, right? On certain intervals, you have to submit the report also. And at the end, you have to submit the closure report saying all about how many patients you have recruited, what was done, how was the procedure, what was the expenses, compensation, adverse event, whatever the throughout has happened, whatever has happened throughout the clinical research, you have to report. Okay, and sometimes if they want the interval monitoring, you have to report them on those intervals, like after 3 months, after every 6 months, after or every 12 months. Usually 6 months they ask for the report. Their major task, one of the major task is protocol deviation. So can someone enlighten me on the protocol deviation, guys? What is protocol deviation? Who will tell me the protocol deviation? That's why I did not write anything and I highlighted the protocol deviation. Tell me about the protocol deviation. What is protocol deviation? Who will tell me about protocol deviation? I don't want you to sleep, guys. Please wake up. It's a fantastic class. I believe this is a wonderful class. Okay. Yes, guys. Tell me what is protocol deviation? I Nobody is writing about protocol deviation, guys. Not following the protocol. Deviation from the method of sample. Okay. Violation of the study procedures. No, it is not about violation of the study procedures. Not at all. A non-compliance study does not have any consequences at the end. No. When somebody don't follow the protocol, that is study deviation, that is protocol deviation. No, I will say no. Not following the protocol. Not following the protocol is a blunt statement, Ashima. Not following the protocol is a blunt statement. Okay. Can someone tell me some cases of protocol deviation? Yes. Any changes in the protocol procedure? Collecting the data which is not mentioned in the protocol. Can you collect the data which is not mentioned in the protocol? Can you collect unscheduled visits? Okay. The correct answer is yes, Mohit has written due to some avoidable or sometimes unavoidable reasons, change in the course of action. Okay, let me tell you. I mean, you guys are partially correct, but not exactly correct. So the protocol deviation is, you will understand with an example. Let me tell you. See, suppose I'm working on some genetic studies. Okay, genetic modulation, suppose genetic modulation for LADA. Okay, LADA is nothing but latent autoimmune diabetes for adults. Okay, this is the type of diabetes. I am working on the LADA, right? I am working on the LADA and my sample size is 400 and I have to do it in 2 years. I have to do it in 2 years. I mean, previously my sample size came 400 for 2 years, and that time the patient load in the hospital was really good, and I could have done that. Listen carefully, guys. I could have done that. But now, after 1 year of the thesis, I mean, 1 year of the research, I collected only 50 patients. In first year, I have collected only 50 patients. And in next year, I have to collect 350 patients, which is almost not possible. Almost not possible. Understand? Almost not possible. Right? So what I'll do is I will write to ethical committee with a justification that I am not getting this number of patient and it is not possible to complete my research with this number of population within this timeline. Okay. And you will get amendment in the protocol. You will get amendment in the protocol for the sample size. That is called deviation. You understand? That is called deviation. If you are not, by any chance, by avoidable or unavoidable reasons, if you are not able to follow the tasks or follow the course of the action as per the protocol, you have to change the protocol. Okay, you have to change the protocol. That is not the only scenario. That is not the only scenario. There are multiple scenarios. Okay, like I wrote some test, but that is not available at my center. I cannot do the test. Okay, I have written, I got the approval, but later, there are some unavoidable problems. Like the vendor has called off his MOU with the hospital or the university. Now they cannot do this. So I can write to the ethics committee. So if I am doing anything which is not written in the protocol, that must be reported and reapproval must be taken before doing it. Understand? Everyone is right doing against the protocol. No, this is you are doing as per the protocol only after taking the reapproval or after taking the approval for the changes. First, whatever trouble do you have? whatever things are not achievable. Okay, usually the correct word is the things are sometimes not achievable. Okay, for those conditions, we go to the ethics committee, we write for the changes, and those changes are known as deviation because we are deviating from the path. We are deviating from the actual path. Now, let me tell you the different part, different story of that. Not only the sample size, one more example. Suppose you are using the new drug. Suppose you are using the new drug and you were expecting like this drug will go perfectly fine. Like drug A is going perfectly fine with all type of medicines like medicines B, C, D and all. Right? Medicines B, C, D and all. Right? So, but when you have given this medicine to a certain population, certain race, okay, in that race, the drug is not, showing the compatibility with another medicine. I mean, this A, B, C, D are, like the normal course medicines the person is taking, the patient or the participant is taking, right? But when you are giving the A, which was perfectly fine with B, C, D in another race, but in the new race, A is not compatible with drug D. Okay. So in certain cases, what you will do is you will exclude the D from the protocol. You will exclude the population who is taking the drug D. You will keep them in the exclusion. After certain time, after you will get to know first that okay, this drug is not working with drug D, right? Drug A is not compatible with drug D in this race. You will not come to know initially. You will come to know after certain time of the clinical trial or after certain time of the clinical research. So that time when you will notice the reason, you will go back to the ethics committee and you will say, no, I want to remove this group. I cannot go ahead with this group because this group is causing problem to my research. Understand? So that is the another example of protocol deviation. Understand? So whenever the things are either not achievable or things are not going according to the protocol, and you have to take the approval for the change. Okay, so that is called as protocol deviation. See, termination is not protocol deviation. When there are multiple adverse events or non-avoidable multiple adverse events, those are not at all good for the clinical trial. The protocol must be cancelled. The study must be cancelled and terminated with immediate effect. That is not protocol deviation. Protocol deviation means the small changes in the course because of the unavoidable or avoidable regions. Okay, where the things are not achievable. Okay, where at any stage of clinical trial, okay, let me say, when any stage of a clinical trial it comes to a conclusion that the trial is likely to compromise the right, safety and well-being of the trial subject, you can also deviate the protocol. Okay, then proceedings only with at least 5 members. So as we have seen that there must be 7 members in the ethics committee, but when there is a review committee, I mean review meeting, okay, in the review meeting, at least 5 members out of those 7 members must be there. Okay, that is the important task. At least 5 members must be there in the review committee out of those 7 members. Okay, maintenance of the records. The ethics committee shall maintain the data, record all the registers and all the other documents to the functioning and review of clinical trials of bioavailability or bioequivalence studies. They should keep all the data records like protocol, data collection formats, case report forms, investigator brochures submitted for the review. Whatever is there, it should be maintained properly. Copies of all the decisions which are communicated to the applicant must be recorded and sent to DCGI. Okay, sent to CDSCO. All the recommendations given by ethics committee at different time points, and those should be maintained as the records. Records related to the severe adverse events, medical management of the trial subjects, compensation paid must be maintained and sent to CDSCO in India, must be sent to CDSCO. Understand? So these are the important things of an important task and responsibility of the ethics committee. Understand? Ethics committee. Cancellation of the ethics committee. Now, this is again the term for cancellation of the ethics committee. See, this is very important, guys. This is very, very important. If any ethics committee found to be found to be not doing correct work, or not giving the approvals correctly, or not following the rules and regulations given by CDSCO or the authority, if they are caught in such actions, they must be cancelled with immediate effect. Okay, if they are not following the rules and regulations of sponsors, for subjects, for investigators, they must be cancelled. Those ethical committees must be cancelled. Okay, so now let's come to the clinical trial. Okay, let's come to the clinical trial, and let's talk about the clinical trial. Here you will be seeing a lot of things. Okay, I'll after this, there are only few slides. After that, I'll take you to the real guidelines, where we'll see what are the things given in the guidelines. See, when we talk about the clinical trials, there are a lot of things to discuss. Can someone tell me what are the things we have to discuss in the clinical trials? When we talk about the clinical trials, what are the things to be discussed in the clinical trial? Can someone tell me, guys? Yes. Anyone? This is a very important thing here, guys. You must know all. Can someone tell me what are the things to be discussed in clinical trials? Yes, guys. Phases of clinical trial: participant safety, methodology, safety, efficacy, phases, ethics, aims, conclusion, inclusion criteria. Okay. Okay. Information regarding PI, documentation, phases. Correct. Okay. So let me write one by one. Let me write one by one according to my knowledge. As per my knowledge, first thing is new investigational drug or drugs, right? We must talk about the drugs. In the drugs, there are, buying of the drug. Either you are buying the drug for test, either you are manufacturing the drug for the test, either you are importing the drug for the test, right? Then you will be talking about protocol, right? You will prepare the protocol. And when you are talking about the protocol, you will be talking about a lot of other things. Lot of other things I'll write here. Lot of other things is site. Site. Site would be either hospital, community, or research center. See, these are the very important and chronological things. You will be talking about these things. And site, then you will be talking about sponsor, right? You'll be talking about CRO or CMO, site management organizations, clinical research organizations, contract research organizations, or site management organizations. You'll be talking about what? Investigator, right? You'll be talking about RAs. You'll be talking about what? You'll be talking about IRBs. You'll be talking about, institutional ethics committees. Institutional ethics committees. You'll be talking about clinical trial phases. You'll be talking about methodology, indications, methodologies, indications, course of action, right? You will be talking about timelines. You will be talking about budget, right? You'll be talking about compensation, right? You'll be talking about compensation. You'll be talking about regulatory. You'll be talking about documentation. You'll be recording some of the. You'll be talking about use of technology here. So there are the list of things what must be learned from these things. Then, other than these are the normal things. Other than that, you will be talking about toxicology, right? Toxicities, side effects, or not side effects here. Here we got what we call them. Here we call them ADRs, adverse drug reactions, or ADEs, adverse drug events, right? Here we talk about deaths, right? So lot of things are there. Lot of things are there. When we talk about a clinical trial, there are hundreds of the things to talk. There are hundreds of the things to talk. Absolutely. BA, studies, BA, studies and auditors. There are a lot of things to talk about, right? Auditors, BA studies. So these everything, what I'm telling you is these everything is given in these everything is given in these guidelines. Everything with proper definitions, proper rules and regulations, everything is mentioned in these guidelines. Okay, everything. Let's see one by one. Let's see a little bit. Let's see. Okay. So no person, first of all, the basics, no person or institution or organization shall conduct clinical trial of a new drug or investigational new drug. Okay. Except in accordance with the permission granted by Central Licensing Authority. What does it mean by? This means that if the drug is not approved, this drug is not approved, or this drug is not granted to be used in human beings by authority. Okay, you cannot do a clinical trial. Researchers cannot conduct a clinical trial until the drug is approved for the use in human beings. Whether that is new investigational drug or whether that is any kind of tablet formula or anything, until and unless after drug development. Remember guys, the statement, very clear statement, if any kind of NID, new investigational drug, or the drug or the element or the chemical entity, if it is not approved by the authorities, you cannot conduct any kind of clinical trial on that. Okay, without the protocol, definitely then you have to get the protocol done, protocol written, and it must be approved by the ethics committee for clinical trials. Okay, then no person or institution or organization shall conduct clinical trial for a new drug or investigational new drug except in accordance with the procedure. Means whatever you have written in the ethics committee, if the ethics committee approves your clinical trial protocol, you have to go accordingly. The work of every clinical trial site shall be overseen by ethics committee for clinical trial, right? So that is the major task of ethical committees. Process to conduct the clinical trial and studies of the new drug. A person or institution or organization which intend to conduct the clinical trial of a new drug or what shall make an application to Central Licensing Authority duly filled in CT04. CT04 is clinical trial form 04. Okay. CT04 is the form number 4, which must be submitted to CDSCO if you want to use any kind of new investigational drug in any institution or anywhere, right? That must be taken in CT04. Okay, with all the information and documents as specified, you have to submit. So can someone tell me, let's talk about the simple thing, guys, for you. I mean, we're not going through the sponsors, investigators, you all know IRB ethics committee, but the major things I'll touch here. Can someone tell me what must be the documents when you are going for a clinical trial conduction and you are submitting the application for ethics committee approval? What documents you have to submit? Can someone tell me what documents you have to submit to the ethics committee, guys? Can someone tell me the list of documents? Yes. Yes, guys. List of documents. Protocol, ICF, informed consent. Yes. Study dossier. Yes. CDA, CTA, FDF. Guys, I am talking about, okay, you are mixing the industrial part and the institutional part, academic part here. Okay. CDA, CTA, FDF, IU are not required usually in the academic clinical trial. Okay. In the academic clinical trial, we need the protocol, the case report form, the CRF, the consent report, I mean the informed consent form, the PIS, patient information sheet, and in different languages. So those things we need, those things we required. And if we are using any kind of NID, new investigational drug, then we need DCGI approval for that. Okay. And if we are going for the industry, definitely the study dossier, complete study dossier is required. That is CDA, CTA, FDIU. I mean, whatever is there, those. And along with that, the important part here is the information about investigators, information about the memorandum of understandings with, if you are collaborating with someone, if you are collaborating with some institutions, some laboratories, some research centers, it must be in the MOUs, and that document must be submitted. The CVs of all the investigators must be submitted along with the protocol. Either those are institutional or industrial, okay, to the ethics committee, institutional review board, or maybe to the CDSCO. Everything must be recorded, okay. And the details of the drug, in a new investigational drug, and if there are any placebo, or if there are any guidelines medical therapy, and the full complete methodology, how many arms, randomization, blinding, those everything must be recorded in the protocol properly. Okay, so the documents and the information whatever is required must be recorded properly and sent. Okay, then if satisfied, they will give the approval grant, right? So all communications must be done timely, like the reportings, closure, and the patient recruitment, whatever timelines are given must be done on time. What are the post-trial formalities? Can someone tell me what are the post-trial formalities, guys? These guidelines talk about the post-trial formalities also. So post-trial formalities are nothing but documentation and preservation of those documentations at least for 5 years now. Previously, it was for 15 years. Now it is for 5 years. And if it is in the record keeping, yes, record keeping, storage of the documentation, it is for 5 years. Previously, it was for 15 years. And if it is in the digital form, it must be there for at least 10 years. If the records and documentations are in the paper format, for 5 years, it must be stored. And if it is in the digital format, it must be recorded for 10 years at least. Okay. So post-trial formalities are recordings, closure reports, and everything. So these clinical trial guidelines are also talking about inspections of the premises related to the clinical trial. So who comes here? Again, the associate DCGI or the monitoring officer or auditor from DCGI will come for that, or maybe from the ethics committee is permitting any person for the audit. Okay, so auditors will come from the regulatory side. Okay, under Rule 22 in the form CT06, Rule 23, Form 4A, including his representative and the investigator could be the investor, must be there for the inspection. Suspension or the cancellation of the permission to conduct the clinical trial, any kind of flaw if they found, the clinical trial can be cancelled anytime. Okay. Under Rule 22, Form CT06, again, this is the auditing form. This is the auditing form, actually, CT06. And if they fails to comply in Form 4A, if they fails to comply within Form 4A, that is for the auditing inspection, if they don't fulfill all the requirements, that time, they have the responsibility, or they have the all the authorities to cancel the permission to conduct the clinical trial. They can terminate the clinical trial immediately. Then there is certain things called as bioequivalence and bioavailability study center. So there are specific study centers for bioavailability and bioequivalence studies, like where all the equipments, resources are available. So those things need to be permitted. Okay, need to take approvals before any kind of clinical trial or any kind of bioavailability and bioequivalence studies. Okay, so how does it come? How does it come from, those? So they have to apply for the center first under the rule 45, and then they should get the grant permission from the authority, from the CDSU, to create or to develop the bioequivalence or bioavailability study center. And then there are multiple rules against, they can either manufacture, or they can buy, or they can, import the new drugs and investigational with the application in form 16, in the form number 16. Okay. So, first you have to fill the form number 16 for import of new drug or investigational drugs for clinical trials. Okay, so you have to fill the form number 16, and that will be go for scrutiny for, under the CDSCO and DCGI. And if they feel satisfied, they will send all the, permissions, and they will permit you to use. Right. So the last thing in the slides I want to, here, because the compensation part will not come in the slides. I'll teach the compensation part from the guidelines, because there are the formulas and big, table of the compensations and all. So I'll tell you in the guidelines itself. So as I asked initially, what is the major thing removed from the cosmetic acts, 1945, and done now? That is scheduled Y. Schedule Y is completely, removed, erased from the Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1945, 1945. And now the new NDCT has come 2019 in reference to respect the human use, for the clinical trials, right, guys? So these are from those things. Now let me share the NDCT guidelines with you, and let's learn from them. Okay, let's learn from the guidelines directly. So I hope it is visible to you guys. It's visible, guys? Can someone tell me it is visible or not? Okay, yeah, perfectly fine. So I think my pen will not work here. Okay, it's working perfectly fine. Great. Okay, so see, these looks like this. The new drug and clinical trial rules 2019, amended again in 2022, as I told, and came in existence, in 2019, but proposed in 2018 here. 2018, not 1st July, 1st February, guys. It was 1st February 2018 and came into the existence in 19th March 2019, almost after 1 year, right? So here there are, as we were talking about, there are 13 chapters. First chapter talks about the definitions, the preliminary things. Okay, definitions like academic clinical trial definition, act definition, active pharmaceutical ingredient definition, adverse events, bioavailability studies, biomedical and health research, central licensing authority, what is clinical trial, what is clinical trial protocol, what is clinical trial site, right? Or there are a lot of things what are being done here. I'll come to the main part, but let me show you the things. Okay, what is similar biologics, what is sponsor, what is site licensing authority, what trial subject, like the person, the means a person who is either a patient or a healthy person to whom investigational product is administered for the purpose of a clinical trial is called as trial subject. Okay. Then chapter 2 talks about authorities and officers. As I told you, DCGI is the authority here, right? Chapter 3 talks about ethics committee for clinical trials, bioavailability and bioequivalence studies. What we talked about, like who is required, who's not required, what are the rules, what are the regulations of ethics committees, like registration of the ethics committee, renewal, validity period of ethics committee. So we talked about these things, functions of ethics committee, all we have already talked about, right? Then proceedings, like 5 members must be there at least. Then maintenance of the record, right? So those things are suspension, cancellation of the registration of ethics committee. Chapter 4 talks about ethics committee for biomedical and health research. So previously we were talking about in chapter 3 and 2, we were talking about ethics committee for clinical trials, but we have here in chapter 5 ethics committee for biomedical and health research, and those two things are almost 99% similar. Okay, 99% similar. Their constitution, their registration, their constitution, their registration is all same under CT01 and CT03, CT02 and CT0. Here, the new form has introduced CT03 for bioavailability studies. That's all. otherwise similar. Then suspension is completely similar. Then chapter 5 talks about clinical trial bioavailability and bioequivalence studies for new drugs and investigational drugs. So first thing, they are talking about clinical trial, what we have just discussed, clinical trials of new drugs and investigational drug. So they are talking who should conduct the clinical trials, what kind of permissions they need, applications to the permissions. As I told, under CT04, they should take the permission for, the clinical trial conduction, and they should get the grant to permit. And then what are the permissions for new discoveries, research and manufacturers in India. So these are all talked in chapter 5. Okay, then the validations and all. Then the chapter 6 comes here. In the part B of that chapter 5, bioavailability and bioequivalence studies are talked about. Again, the same thing, how to conduct, how to take the permission from ethics committee and all, right? So this is just the glance overview of those things. And here is the chapter 6, compensation. Okay, here is the chapter 6 where it calls about compensation. So let's talk about the compensation. Compensation is in case of when we give the compensation, when we get, okay, before I go there, guys, I want to know your views. I want to know your views when we must give some compensation, or when the participant must get the compensation. What could be the scenarios? Guys, you are the researchers. There are 183 people except me. Tell me 5 scenarios. Okay. Tell me 5 scenarios, all of you, where we should give the compensation and why, where we can give the compensation. Tell me some scenarios. An adverse effect occurs. Adverse effect. Okay. Any adverse event in case of CVS? Yes. So the correct answer is not any adverse event occurs. If adverse event is just vomiting, would you claim for the compensation? If adverse event is just headache, would you compensate? Would you claim for the compensation? Is it? Not at all. You have to write the correct words. That's why the legality is important. That's why your marks are important. You don't get the marks. So the thing is, in case of life-threatening or permanent damages, okay, some not temporary damages, sometimes even permanent damages, death or serious adverse event. In case of life-threatening ADRs, we usually go for, in the casualty, injury or serious ADRs, we go and get the claim for compensation. Claim for the compensation. So there are some rules and some injuries and some specific eligibility criteria for the compensation. So let's learn about those things. So here, where any death of a clinical trial subject occurs during the clinical trial or bioavailability or bioequivalence study. Okay, so the procedure comes under the rule number 42, and the compensation will be given to its representative, the person's representative, by sponsors or its representatives. Okay, where permanent disability or any other injury occurs to the clinical trial subject during the study. Okay, so the trial subject shall be provided financial compensation. So first thing is death, casualty. Okay, first thing is casualty, death. And then the second thing is permanent disability or any other injury that is permanent. Then the person can claim for the compensation, right? And who should give that? The financial compensation should be given by the sponsor or representatives, right? So the financial compensation, what should be the financial compensation? Financial compensation should be in addition to any expenses incurred for the medical management of the clinical trial. If there are temporary harm, if there are temporary but severe harm to the patient, understand guys, severe harm, there are the definitions and 5 stages. I give you the assignment. Now, there are the 5 stages of harm. Okay, you read those harm. And if there is a severe harm or either temporary or permanent, okay, in that case also the patient or the participant can claim for the compensation. What are those harm? What are those harms? Like, see, if the persons or the patients, if the person is inpatient, person is in the hospital and taking any kind of new investigational drug or the drug, if his hospitalization gets extended, or if he needs any kind of support like oxygen support, ECMO support, and anything which is additional to his which is additional to his current therapy, whatever is additional to save him or protect him from the severe injuries, if those are there, okay, that can come under the temporary injuries, temporary, events. So those could be given by the sponsor again if the extended of hospitalization or new additions in the therapy because of the investigational drug. Okay, if it is happening, then it should be given or covered by the sponsor. Okay. In event of the injury not being permanent in nature, the quantum of compensation shall be commensurate with the loss of wages of the subject as provided in the 7th schedule, as I just told, right? That can be given. The sponsor or its representative shall give an undertaking along with the application for clinical trial permission to the central authority. So it is mandatory to write in the protocol, and the forms must be given, and the estimation amount must be given while getting the approval from CDSCO in the clinical trials or in the ethics committee also. If there is a harm or risk to the patient or the participant, you must write that. You must write what compensation would be given, right? So where the sponsor or its representative who has obtained permission to conduct clinical trial or viability studies fails to provide the financial compensation, they must they must go through the law, shoes and all courts. Okay, there are a lot of things. Okay, so ethical committees are responsible for the entire process. Ethical committees are responsible for the entire process. They must be mediator, they must be mediate and monitor everything. So considering the injury or death is permanent disability, there are things when the case of injury, death, injury in these studies, there are different cases when they need how to go for the process. Okay. Then I will come to the compensation. There is a specific chapter on the compensation. Again, there is a full schedule on the compensation. Okay. So chapter 7 talks about the study centers, what we talked before also, like what should be the inspection, who should do the inspection and all, how to grant the registration for the center and all, right? There's nothing specific, conditions for the registration and all, right? Then there is chapter 8. Chapter 8 talks about manufacture or the new drugs or investigational drugs for the clinical trials. Okay. So again, they are talking if there are any kind of manufacturing of new drug or new investigational drug, then, again, no one should take it without the permission to manufacture, so see, no person shall manufacture a new drug or an investigational new drug to conduct clinical trial or viability or bioequivalence study or for examination test without the permission to manufacturer. Okay, the actual manufacturer, they should not do it. They should take the permission, or they should buy it, or they should import it. Okay, so for the manufacturing, again, you have to take the license from the central licensing authority, that is again DCGI and CDSCO. Okay, under the, with the CT form, the form number 10. Okay, then other important things here is there are some just validations and all. New chapter is about import. Okay, the next chapter is about import. Yeah, chapter 9th is about import of new drugs and investigational new drugs for the clinical trials or bioequivalency or bioavailability studies. Okay, so similarly, no person shall import a new drug or any substance relating to conducting the clinical trial, bioavailability or bioequivalence studies or for examination, test or analysis except in accordance with the license granted by the central licensing authority. So you must have the license first, even for the importing of the drug for any kind of clinical trial, any kind of bioavailability or bioequivalence studies. Understand, guys? So here, these are the rules and regulations, validity period and all, everything, how to get the license and all, right? Manner of labeling, what should be there. So the chapter 10 talks about import or manufacture of a new drug for the sales and distribution. So this is not about the clinical research. When it comes to the regulations for the new drug, manufacturing and sales, this is also there in the NDCT because we have erased the complete schedule. Why? we have erased the complete schedule Y. So that is also given in this, guidelines. Okay. So not directly related to clinical trials. Here again, import. So they are talking, comprehensively about the import and all. So let's go to the schedule. I'll show you the schedule. Next 10, 15 minutes, we'll talk about the schedule. Yeah, so there are some amendments. See, that is very important. Chapter 12 is very important, guys. Chapter 12 talks about all the amendments in the drugs and cosmetics rules 1945. Okay, the new amendments like the schedule Y is not applicable. See, the schedule Y shall not be applicable in respect to new drug and investigational new drugs for human use from the date of commencing in the force of new drugs and clinical trials. That is the major change in the old rules and new rules, right? And that is just talk about, I mean, the chapter 12 just talk about these things only. The amendment, the major amendment here is schedule Y is not affected, in the for the use from the 2019 19th March 2019 rule. I mean, the schedule Y is not at all applicable anywhere, right? And then chapter 13 talks about miscellaneous. There are many things like post submission meetings, and name of the countries for the purpose of new drugs, and there are a lot of things, dealers, about the dealers and all. Right. Now, after the chapters, the things come is schedule. Okay. Schedules. So general principles and practices for the clinical trials, like we talk about the sponsor, we talk about the methodologies, we talk about the phase 1, phase 2, right? I mean, this is just the clinical research, what we learned, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, how should be conducted. Okay. How we should conduct the studies in pediatric patients, how we should conduct the studies in pediatric patients, what are the guidelines we should, how we should conduct the studies in, sorry, how we should conduct the studies in pregnant or nursing women. Okay, those are also mentioned here. How we should conduct the clinical trial, analyze and report, right? And then the permissions, there are nothing but in second schedule they talk about the requirements and guidelines for the permissions to import and manufacture of the new drug. Okay, for the clinical trial, requirements and guidelines. Okay, requirements and guidelines. Schedule 3, like they see, there are one more thing, like there is one more important, thing I wanted to tell you. I highlighted here, accelerated approval process. Okay, guys, this is very new and important for you to understand. Accelerated approval process. See, normal approval process takes, some time, but accelerated approval process may be allowed to a new drug for a disease or condition taking into account its severity, rarity, and prevalence, like corona, So we have conducted the clinical trials in the fast track mode for corona, right? For SARS-CoV-2, we have 2019, we have conducted the clinical trials in the fast track. So how those things were approved in the fast track? So there is something called accelerated approval process. Okay, that accelerated approval process gives the permission to all the researchers to conduct and to conduct the clinical trial faster. Okay, not the process, but the process of approval is faster in such cases. Okay, in cases of when there is the severity, rarity, and prevalence of the things and availability of the lack of alternative treatments, so prima facie cases, we don't know how to treat, how to do that. So to get some information over such cases and such, prevalences and, such endemics and pandemics, we should accelerate the approval process, and that gives us the permission, to conduct the clinical trials without any delay. Okay, that is accelerated. So that comes under the schedule 2. Okay, then schedule 2 also talks about animal toxicity, non-clinical toxicity studies, right? So there are the tables which talks about single dose toxicity, dose ranging studies, rodents, and 90 days repeated dose toxicity studies. Like who are working in the animal studies, they can definitely, they must refer these. I mean, we'll be talking about in our animal clinical animal trial studies and animal trial guidelines, but here also, like male fertility studies, pediatric studies, they're talking about all tetragenous, teratogenicity and all. So what kind of toxicity studies they must do is they have mentioned here, local toxicities, photoallergic, and all the type of allergies. And here there is a wonderful table they have given here. Let me show you here. animal toxicity is required. So all type of systematic toxicities like oral or parenteral or the transdermal route of administration drugs, like how we should do and when we should do. Okay, when we should do single dose, uh less than 1 week, up to 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks. So those things must be done according to these guidelines. Okay, according to these guidelines, it should be done in two species for 24 weeks or 2 weeks or 2 weeks. Right? They have the perfect guidelines. Okay, they have the perfect guidelines for the systemic toxicity studies. So the people, MPharm people who are working in the pharmacology, or the other parts where they're developing the animal models or using the animal models, they must refer these toxicity studies. Okay, here are the toxicity studies, and they see wonderful things they have given here. All these things, like for the male fertility studies, phase 3 in male volunteers or patient female reproduction and development toxicity studies. So all the things they have given perfectly with the definitions. Okay, here what should be monitored, like in the LFT, RFT, what should be monitored, like the alkaline phosphate in the liver, and all the monitoring things they have given here. Okay, phase 3 clinical trials, phase 4 clinical trials, animal pharmacology. So yeah, fixed dose combinations also they talked about here. Fixed dose combinations. So the fixed dose combinations refer to the product containing one or more active ingredient used for a particular indication. Fixed dose combinations can be divided into the following groups, like first group of the first dose combination, second group. So there are many things what they have created. Stability testing for new drugs. They have given the guidelines for stability testing also. Okay. And here are some, things like on which temperature, duration, what is the duration, and also in the long-term studies. So, study conditions for the drug substances and formulations for the refrigerator must be 5 degree plus minus 3 degree for 6 months to 12 months. And for the accelerated one, 25 degree, or, for 25 degree for 6 months is enough. So there are all the studies, right? There are all the things, right? And then they have talked about all the chemical and pharmaceutical informations, like analytical data must be done. I mean, there are the analytical tools and apparatuses, element analysis, mass spectrum, NMR spectra, IP spectra, UV spectra. So these guidelines are comprehensive, guys. Okay, these guidelines are comprehensive and talked about all the parts, right? All the parts, right? So there are multiple tables and multiple things, what you can learn. Data generated by, I mean, the generation forms, and also all the forms are given here. Third schedule talks about conduction of clinical trial. Again, the phase 1, and they talk about the conduction of clinical trial, like informed consent, how must be the informed consent, and how must be the responsibilities of a sponsor, investigator, and ethics committee approval, things, and ethics committee's responsibilities. So they're talking about all the responsibilities also here. Okay, and yeah, about these things. And then let me come to that. And see, they talked about the informed consent also. What should be the informed consent? How should be the informed consent? Informed consent is an essential element, like the statement that the study involves research and explanation of the purpose of the research, then expected duration of the participation, description of the procedures to be followed, inclusive all invasive procedures, description of any reasonably foreseeable risk. So you have to keep all the things in informed consent. When you are taking the consent from the person or the participant, you must talk about the risks, you must talk about the procedures, you must talk about the duration, you must talk about the entire, I mean, you must tell about the research, okay, with the explanation, right, guys? So these are all things you should keep in the informed consent. So, and then undertaking by the investigator. So all the forms are given here. Okay, all the forms are given here. See, structure, content, and the format for clinical trial report. So entire clinical trial you can be, you can do with the help of these guidelines only. Everything is mentioned here. See, this is like list of appendices in the clinical study report, protocol and amendments, a specimen of the case report form, patient data listing, discontinued participants, protocol deviations, case report form, publication from the trial, anything, audit certificate and all, right? All the documentation is written here. So these guidelines gives you the comprehensive overview to conduct anything. prescribing information. Generic name must be there for the prescribing. If you're prescribing any drug to the clinical trial participant, proper quantity and quality must be there. Proper names, dosage form, strength must be there. What is the therapeutic indication? What is the posology? What are the contraindications, drug interactions? You must write everything in the prescription, and you must tell everything to the patient when you are writing those things. Again, fourth schedule talks about the requirement of guidelines to be conducted bioequality, bioavailability and bioequivalence studies. The general principles about those bioavailability and study centers, how to get the things, how to make the organization and management of those things, CDSU and all, right? Then okay. Then fifth schedule, post-market assessment. Post-market assessment, clinical trials are there. Post-market assessment studies are there. How to do those things, right? Like phase 4 clinical trials, right? Phase 4 trials, not clinical trials. Phase 4 post-marketing trials are there. So entire process for those ethics approvals, about those things they have written here. Then schedule 6 is like fees of the permissions and all certificate, fees for the license and all. So they have written the fees also. These guidelines gives you the entire thing about fees also. No one can charge the fees more than these. Like, see, application for permission to conduct clinical trial, phase 1 3 lakhs, phase 2 2 lakhs, phase 3 3 lakhs, phase 4 2 lakhs. Reconsideration of the application for the permission conduct trial 50,000. These are in Indian national rupees. If you are asking for the permission from DCGI, you have to pay this much fees if you want to conduct the clinical trial. Okay, application for the permission to conduct bioavailability or bioequivalence studies 2 lakh, right? Reconsideration for bioequivalence studies 50,000, and application for registration of bioequivality and bioequivalence studies center 5 lakh rupees. Okay, you have to pay such fees. There are multiple things. All the fees what you have to give, like application for the permission to manufacture new drug, 2 lakh rupees you have to pay. Okay, so, and then the seventh schedule. Okay, seventh schedule comes about the compensation. Okay, seventh schedule comes about the compensation, and here is the formula for the compensation, guys. It's very important. We'll close the class in 5 minutes. Okay, so formula in case of clinical trial related to death, that should be B into F into R divided by 99.37. Okay, divided by 99 into 99.37. So B is base amount. F is factor depending on the age of clinical trial subject as per Annexure 1. There is Annexure 1 also. Okay, and that calls as Workman Compensation Act. Okay, so and then R is risk factor depending on the seriousness and severity of the disease, presence of comorbidity and duration of the disease for the clinical trial subject at the time of enrollment in the clinical trial between a scale of 0.5 to 4. So this is the scale. Scale is also given. 0.5 is terminally ill. 1 is patient with high risk. 2 is patient with moderate risk. 3 is patient with mild risk. 4 is healthy volunteer. So risk is counted from 0.5 to 4, and that must be, fit in this formula, and then only the compensation is counted. Base amount and all. They have given all the things here. The permanent disability or the clinical trial related injuries, right? So compensation are like that. Compensation formula is given here completely. Okay. So here are the factors. What we're talking about the factors now. So factor is given here. Factor. Factor is not more than age. If it's 16, then to 28. So the factor list is also given here. The complete factor list is given here. You can take the factor from here, right? And now eighth schedule talks about all the forms, right? The last schedule talks about all the forms. Form CT1 for application of the registration of ethics committee, renewal of ethics committee. Then form 3 is grant for research, grant of registration of ethics committee. See, all the forms are given here. All the forms are given here. All 25 forms are given here. See, form 07 is information to initiate the bioavailability or bioequivalence study or new drug or investigational new drug. Okay. And then such like bioequivalence, right? All the bioequivalence and all, right? See, application for grant of permission to manufacture formulation of unapproved active pharmaceutical ingredient, unapproved. So you have to fill the form 12. Okay, if you want the ingredient which is unapproved, so you have to fill this. Okay, so there are all the forms, guys. I will share this. Okay, I'll share this with you. You can go through. It is not possible to, complete everything, but yeah, definitely a few things I can teach you, few things you can learn from it. So with that, I'll, uh, wind up the class and we can then talk more. Okay, we can talk more with the questions, guys. Okay, so thank you very much for today's class, guys. And if you want to register for this course, still registrations are open. You can tell your friends if they want to learn about all the guidelines properly, and then the course is here. You can tell everyone about these things, and you also can, if the people who have not registered for this course, they can register. Can you suggest some books? There is no need of books. The guidelines are comprehensive. Guidelines are more than sufficient. Okay, guidelines are more than sufficient to read. There are the books also, but I think that's more than sufficient. The attendance form is being shared here, guys. Attendance form has been shared. You can fill the attendance form. Okay, you can fill the attendance forms. And if you have any questions, you can speak or you can write here, guys. We can talk also, okay? And tomorrow, we are going to talk about what? Let me see what we are going to talk tomorrow. Any questions, guys? Anything? Anything you want to add on? Let me share these guidelines right now. Let me share these guidelines right now with you guys. One sec. I'll share it right away. By the time you can write your questions, guys. Okay, tomorrow we are going to talk about, tomorrow we are discussing the National Ethical Guidelines for Biomedical and Health Research involving human participants. So tomorrow we'll discuss more comprehensively about the human participation. Okay. So I expect you to go through once and learn and to see these guidelines. I will again answer how many of you have studied or read these guidelines tomorrow. So please go and check. Next, you all have the brochure. So tomorrow we are talking about National Ethical Guidelines for Biomedical and Health Research involving human participant 2017. Okay. So I'm sending today's guidelines to your group right now, so you can study those. Okay, let me. Okay, here are the guidelines, guys. And if you want to register and get all the guidelines and classes on all the guidelines, please register, guys. Okay. Yeah, so I have shared these guidelines. Yep. Okay, these are uploading. Let me check the questions by the time. Thank you very much. Can you share the registration link? Let me see where's the registration link. I have to see where's the registration link. One sec. I have no idea. One second. Let me see. Okay, I got the registration link. Here is the registration links for this course, guys. Yeah, I have. Oh, no problem. You can share in the group also. Yes. Here is the link. My main query: how to get government funds and grant to conduct the clinical trial. I believe Dr. Rang, you forgot to attend our recently conducted entire workshop on clinical, the research proposal writing research grant proposal writing and getting the research grants. That was again 2 days, 2 days workshop. I have conducted recently in the month of June. So I think you have missed that. No problem. We'll conduct that again. The entire workshop was on how to write the grants from ICMR, DST, DBT, NIH, all with all the formats and everything, all the case series, case reports also. So that we can take again. Okay. So this is the thing. Okay. So question, let me take questions. There are two questions only, one question only from Mohit. Sir, what are the penalties for not following these guidelines apart from getting blacklisted from that is the major penalty. You cannot conduct the research later. So penalties sometimes if you're not following these guidelines and if you are caught, caught playing with the life of the, participants or human being in the clinical trial, if someone dies because of your negligence, because of your ignorance, you can go to jail. Okay. You can go to jail. No fine will work. You can go to jail straight away. That is the major penalty. Blacklisting is secondary. Going to jail is primary. If you are caught and if you, because of your clinical trial or your negligence, your avoidance, if someone, you know, is getting harmed and permanently disabled or death or something, you are going to jail. Okay. But sir, isn't lifetime penalty right? No, see, it depends. Lifetime, no, it depends. No, it's not lifetime. It depends, definitely. It depends. There are bailable offense, also non-bailable offense. That is the legal, that is medical legal part. I mean, I'm not taking the medical legal guidelines here, but that is the medical legal part. And in different cases, there are different penalties, not the life imprisonment only. There are some 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years life imprisonment and fines also. But usually there are the provisions of jail in the severe harm or where if because of your avoidance and your ignorance someone dies or someone gets the permanent disability. How much total cost it takes to conduct the clinical trial? It depends how many centers you are taking, how many sites you are involving, what is your drug, and how many people you are involving. It depends completely on that. Okay. It completely depends on the process. If it is multinational, if it is multi-center, if it is, how many patients, how many investigators, it totally depends. So uh, we cannot estimate that, but usually a drug development phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials from a company, it costs somewhere around 300 million, dollars. Okay. Yes, guys. Okay. So take care. Yeah.